You are listening to Part 11 of The 7 Medicines, The Wise Woman Way with Susan Weed at Time Monk Radio. Hello, Susan. Welcome back to Time Monk Radio.
Hi, Gemini. I'm really so thrilled that we get so much of your wisdom as we move into our third medicine, mind medicine, energy medicine, placebo medicine. So we've been kind of teasing for the first 2 weeks of talking about this medicine that Susan and Gemini were like, oh, hello, Earth to Susan and Gemini. We're like way up there, you know. And the people who would be saying things like that are the people who are going to be saying, it's only a placebo. It's just a placebo. It doesn't do anything at all. It's a placebo. And I have to say to them, you're right, it's a placebo. I completely agree with you. It's a placebo. And we know that 50% of the time placebos work. And we talked about this last week. We talked about what's really going on here is not the stuff. It's not the word written on the bottle that makes the ice crystal. It's the belief. It's not the white sugar that makes the person weak or strong. It's the belief. So placebo, of course placebos work because they're about belief. The classic placebo story that I was told when I first started looking into healing and herbal medicine was a story about a man who had lung cancer. And this was back in the 70s, and there was really very little we could do for people who had lung cancer at that time. He learned that there was an experimental drug that was getting good results. And he was able to convince his doctor to get this drug for him. His cancer went into complete remission. It was indeed an absolute miracle that this new chemotherapeutic agent had been able to get rid of his lung cancer. Well, the story does not end there. The story actually ends 15 to 16 years later when the man, quite by accident, happens to see an article in the newspaper saying that the drug he took is no longer being offered to anyone because test after test has found it to be completely ineffective. His lung cancer came back and he was dead within a month.
Incredible.
Belief. Belief. Do you know what Ipecac is?
Ipecac?
Yeah.
The syrup?
Ipecac, the stuff that makes you throw up, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, Ipecac is used like at poison control centers. If somebody's like taking a poison and we want to get it out of their system, we give them Ipecac and they throw it up. Now, it's not always what we want to do. There's certainly classes of poisons we don't want people throwing up. But Ipecac is used a lot to make people throw up. And so let me tell you a story that helps us to understand why science does double-blind experiments and why it still might not be enough. Somebody who wanted to study the placebo effect took Ipecac and put it into bottles with a drug label on it that labeled it as an antiemetic. In other words, something that would prevent vomiting, prevent you from throwing up. These were then packaged, to look like normal drugs, and then were given as normal drugs to sales representatives who were to take them as samples and give them to doctors. So the sales representatives were not in on it. They thought they were actually being given a new antiemetic drug, and they had samples of it that they were going to give to doctors, and the doctors were then going to give this antiemetic drug to their most severely nauseated patients, those who were taking chemotherapy, those who, for whatever reason, were having a horrible time with either feeling like they were going to throw up or were actually throwing up. So we're all going, excuse me, it's ipecac. It's ipecac. This is not a matter of belief here. We've got an active agent that causes people to throw up. All right, we've got it bottled in a bottle that says it's antiemetic. All right, we have a salesperson who believes it's an antiemetic. Okay, it's been given to a doctor under the belief system that it's antiemetic, and the doctor is giving it to patients believing it's an antiemetic. So we should not be too surprised to find that half the people who took it found their nausea and vomiting completely controlled. The placebo effect. Modern science tries to deal with the effect of belief. Is hugely powerful, especially when it comes to health. And so they test drugs against placebos. But what is a placebo then? The most comprehensive or coherent explanation, I think, for a placebo is a substance which, by itself, does no harm, and that is used to elicit a response. Homeopathy is the classic case of placebo. The homeopathic tablets are lactose, they're pure lactose, and although they are available in a variety of different strengths from 10x to millions, and although there are hundreds of different plants that are represented, no homeopathic remedy, whether liquid or the little white pills or the little white balls, has ever been found to contain even so much as an atom of any herb. In other words, homeopathic remedies are pure placebos in terms of active ingredient. There is no active ingredient. It is all filler. Right? And now, homeopaths, or maybe even you, and certainly I would say, it's the energy. It's the unmeasurable part. It's the energy part. That's what makes it a homeopathic remedy, is the energy part, not the molecule of herb part. And that detractor who we invited here for this show says placebo. And we have to say, yes, of course. Yes, of course it's a placebo. And placebos work. As I often say, a placebo works 50% of the time. So basically, what we're finding out is that 50% of the time, we can help people get better without doing much of anything, certainly without giving them anything that will hurt them. And we recall that that's how this system is set up. It's set up based on how likely is the technique, procedure, or substance that I'm going to use for healing, how likely is it that will harm me? How severe will that harm be? And how long-lasting will that harm be? So, when we're using a placebo, we can say there is no harm. And that harm isn't going to go on. It's not going to be severe, and it's not going to last. There simply is no harm. Now, again, if we were to actually take the time to really go into homeopathy, and I'm going to be talking about it next month, but again, not really going into it deeply, then we would find that what I'm saying is rather surface. And that's okay, because I am indeed painting the broad picture here. you'll notice that my books contain pretty good amount of information on homeopathy. So I'm not saying it's a placebo to discredit it. I'm saying it's a placebo to help us all get over the feeling that placebo is the same as saying it's all in your mind. And we brought this up last week. Is it all in my mind? And basically what I'm maintaining was, of course it's all in your mind. That's where it's always been, is all in your mind. And so it's not a problem that it's all in your mind. I think that I might have mentioned, but certainly a story worth telling. Many years ago, in the 70s, I worked with a group of women to have a health conference here in Woodstock, and at the dance that we had, I was dancing with a woman who told me that she did past life regressions, and I rather scoffed. Oh, papa, past life regressions, we don't need to believe in that. And she said, oh, really? Well, I'll give you one for free. Well, of course, if I'm going to go papa about it, then I should, trundle myself off to get a past life regression and see what's going on there. And so I did. And it was rather interesting. I could still to this day tell you what I saw and what I experienced, and it was, quite meaningful to me. But at the end of it, when she was done regressing me to my past life and I had come back to this life, I said to her, but you know what? That's just a story. And I made up that story. You asked me questions like, what are you wearing and what's on your feet and what's around you? And so to answer those questions, I made up a story. It's not like I was really seeing things, because Jim and I, as you and I have established, we use this word see, but many times we don't really see. So in the past life regressions, you said, what kind of shoes are you wearing? It's not like I would look with my eyes and say, oh, they're like patent leather shoes with bows on them. I would kind of feel, what kind of shoes and what kind of dress and so on. And I said to her, so I just made this up, this all in my mind. This has no basis in reality. That past life of mine, what, blah, blah, blah. And which was pretty much, why I had come there, right? And she said, you're so right. It's a story that you chose to make up. I wonder why you chose that one. Boing. When one is presented with the truth, everything stops for a moment, doesn't it?
Indeed.
And you have to say to yourself, yeah, I wonder why I made up that one. And especially that it was, to me, quite meaningful. And solved one of those silly little things that comes up in life. There was a place that I noticed that, recurred in my life where I would get really anxious. Anxious totally out of all relationship to what was going on. And it came up in this past life, and I'm like, oh, so that's why. Okay. Well, isn't it interesting that that's why? While we're talking about the placebo, we should also talk about the nocebo. Have you ever heard of the nocebo?
I've not.
This is not something I am making up. Right? Placebo means that we give somebody something that is basically inert, and they have a positive healing reaction to it. A nocebo reaction is that we give the person the same benign, non-active stuff, and they have symptoms and side effects from taking it.
I didn't know it was called that.
Right. Just as if they were being given a drug.
Interesting. Kind of like how men sometimes will experience pregnancy with their companion, have all the symptoms and signs of it.
Yes, we think that might be a kind of mirroring, that there's a part of our brain that seems to engage in mirroring behavior I don't know if you saw the cover of Time magazine this week. It says, why you will have a cosmetic procedure. You know, and you think, what? And it opens that up, and it says, you will, for the same reason that you wear makeup, and the same reason you wear undergarments, and the same reason you dye your hair, and the same reason, right? Because you want to look like everybody else. And we do. We do. We mirror what is going on, and we want to please those we see as more powerful than us. And all of these come into that placebo effect. Now let's say it again. A placebo is an inert substance. So water is excellent as a placebo. You can take a glass of water, wave your magic wand over it, write a word on it, drop a gemstone elixir into it, shine colors on it, and say, here is your remedy, and presto changeo, that water has become the remedy because we have engaged the energy. We want to look at this from the viewpoint of the skeptic who says, bah, humbug, none of that stuff has any meaning at all. It's all just a glass of water. We say, you're right, it's just a glass of water, but that glass of water has intention. And that intention can change from the course of history. So we are at this interesting place for ourselves that we can ask ourselves, can I get up early enough in the morning to trick myself? Do I have to have somebody else pull this trick on me? Because it's a nice trick, it's a benign trick. Or can I pull this trick on myself? So how could we pull this trick on ourselves? We could take that glass of water and we could write on a piece of paper what we want and tape it to the side of the glass and drink it and say, I am drinking prosperity, or I am drinking freedom from smoking, or whatever it is that we want to put in the water. If we're willing to trust ourselves and believe in ourselves enough, we can make our own placebos. When I was studying homeopathy, and I didn't study for a very long time, it was suggested that one of the best ways to help people who are having substance abuse problems was to get them to make their own homeopathic remedy of the substance by first soaking it overnight in water, then taking a teaspoon of that and putting in a glass of water in a bottle and shaking it, taking a teaspoon of that and doing that 10 times. And they would then have their own homeopathic remedy of the substance that they felt they were out of control in dealing with, whether it was a street drug or ice cream. Whatever it was that the person felt like they really wanted and needed to have an edge there and to get a grip there, that they were encouraged to do that. And I like that about the shaman's playground. Hey, you know, sometimes we really need a shaman. We need the shaman to come in, and we need all of the Mardi Gras. We need the whole thing. But sometimes we can just say, I got it. I can take care of this one. All right? Since it's all in my head, why don't I use what's all in my head right now to make me better? Because that's what I want. And we can do this in really small ways as well as in really large ways. About 6 years ago, my daughter had been saying to me almost daily, I'm overwhelmed. And finally I said to her, let's put this word out of our vocabulary. Let's never use this word again, because it is such an unhelpful word. And it causes us to view ourselves as those who can't cope. And our lives have very much changed since we have thrown that word, and of course that concept out. There is no such thing as being overwhelmed. There are certainly times when I say, there's so much energy coming in here that I'm getting really freaked out about it, and I'm going to have to figure out a way to deal with this. But figuring out a way to deal with it doesn't necessarily mean shutting down, which is what I find overwhelmed is often an excuse for. And what we want in energy medicine is what we've been talking about for these 3 weeks, that openness, that fluidness, that flowingness, that ability to move with life rather than get stuck with life. This, again, is that concept of engage. And as we move deeper into the medicines, we're going to see more and more how being stuck and the inflammation that it causes leads us to very difficult situations physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So in our first medicine, Serenity Medicine, and our second medicine, Story Medicine, and now our third medicine, Energy Medicine, Faith Medicine, Belief Medicine, we are moving more deeply into the river of life, into the river of our own lives. And beginning, as Wayne Dwyer put it many years ago, beginning to be the ones who pull our own strings, finding where those places are and being the ones who are really responsible for ourselves. That's what this kind of medicine is about. The wonderful little anecdote that someone shared with me, and he was at a party, and it was a very large party, and it was a dinner party. They were actually seated at a dinner table, and the woman next to him took a bite of something and then started to look very bad, and he said to her, "Are you okay?" And she said, No, I think there was," and she named some food in this, and I could die from it. And he said, "Do you have an EpiPen?" And she said, "I usually carry it, but I didn't carry it tonight." And he said, "Pick up your purse." She said, "Okay." He said, "And don't look. Open your purse. Reach into your purse. Your EpiPen is indeed there. I put it there for you tonight. I want you to reach in. I want you to feel it in your hand. And I want you to take it out. And I want you to use that EpiPen." And she did. And her symptoms, which could have killed her of anaphylactic shock, went away because the shaman engaged her belief. And because her body knew how to respond to that, because she envisioned and believed it that strongly with that shaman's help, her body was perfectly willing to do what it needed to do. Again, let me say that the placebo effect works about half the time. It's not 100% cure. If it was 100% cure, that would be the end of it. It's like, here we go, the third medicine, and that's it. 100% of people get better. And so placebos, we don't need any other medicines. Oh, no. We need the other medicines because only half the people are going to actually respond to the placebo. Only half of the people are going to be able to engage with the energy. You said last week that you get a sense about what we were calling someone's aura.
Yes.
Do you find that everybody is open to hearing about these senses you get?
No. I often keep them to myself unless they engage me in that conversation.
Because it's going to be about 50-50, isn't it?
It is, and And I'm finding people more open to it. I don't know if they're drawn to that, so they come into my awareness. But I am finding it is increasing from the last decade or so.
All right.
Yes.
Right. So, and it's not necessarily, and this is why the shaman's playground is so big. Somebody might say, oh, homeopathy. Ooh, that really works for me. Like, there's something called rescue remedy. I'm sure you've heard of rescue remedy, right?
Oh, yes, I absolutely have.
Well, every animal I've ever given rescue remedy to has died within 5 minutes.
Oh, really?
So my belief system about rescue remedy is really different than your belief system about it.
Yes. Because I've never had an animal die with it. It's terrible.
I was very upset about 6 years ago. Somebody came with some rescue remedy and put it on my body. And I started screaming. I felt like that area where they put it was burning. It was like acid.
Oh, my.
So, again, it's not the stuff. It's not the thing. It's not, I have rescue remedy. It's the belief. Can we give ourselves enough credit? Can we give ourselves enough power to really let ourselves believe ourselves well? That's why we invited the skeptic this week, right? Because in the next 3 weeks, we are going to talk about believing ourselves well. We're going to talk about sound and color and music and homeopathy and flower essences and gemstone elixirs and talismans and affirmations and visualizations and prayers and spells and auras and channeling and chakras and all these things that are part of the third medicine. Engage the energy. Believe. Have faith. And if somebody wants to call it the placebo, we're chill with that, right? No problem. Because we're having fun in the shaman's playground. And that is one of the most important aspects. Let's remember that as we move from medicine to medicine, that we can use them by saying, I'm going to keep doing serenity medicine, and I'm going to keep doing story medicine, and I'm going to add on energy medicine. Or you can say, enough with serenity, enough with story, I'm just focusing in on energy medicine. Or we can do not just the ones that we've already done, plus the one we're doing, but we can add on others from ahead of us as well to get a global mix if time is of the essence and things are really moving ahead very, very quickly. We're talking about energy, and energy, of course, can be discussed as vibration. We're going to be looking at vibration. We're going to be looking at specifics of how vibration can or can't heal. And things like resonance. Things like people's ability to retain song and music far after the word brain is no longer functioning. We're going to take a look at the difference between affirmations, visualizations, and prayers. And before I end this week, I want to remind you that becoming really proficient in any of these shamanic skills here in the third medicine requires a great amount of experience and a great amount of study. So that, as I say to my students, if you see a shingle hanging out and it says homeopath, acupuncturist, herbalist, flower essences, gemstone elixirs, hand healing, Reiki, and music healing, run the other way. And this is a person who is dabbling, and unless they're 100 years old, and probably doesn't have enough real experience in any of these areas to be of any real assistance. Acupuncture, is that part of healing with energy? I say no, and I'll tell you why. Not next week, but the week after next. That's right, we're going to make you wait a while. Thank you for helping me to reweave the healing cloak of the ancients and to put herbal medicine back in its rightful place as people's medicine. Good night, Gemini. Green blessings, everyone.
Thank you, Susan. Another 30 minutes that just flew by. And this concludes part 11 of our discussion on the 7 medicines, the Wise Woman Way with Susan Weed at Time Monk Radio.